So this video is going to give an overview of Cisco Packet Tracer, which is a great tool, in my opinion, for learning basic networking, Cisco networking at least. It's free to download and you can log in using a Google account. What I'll do is I'll try to give you a quick overview of the user interface and some of the equipment that's available. Obviously, some of the advanced features are not available. It's just a simulation. But for most part, the basic features and concepts can be learned. Having said that, at the bottom, you'll see that you have the routers, you have the switches. These are the L2 layer 2 switches, and these are the L3 switches. And the rest I don't think you need to worry about, but 2960 as an L2 and a 3560 or a 3550 as an L3, and I'll just demo that quickly. And then the firewalls, you got the L2 and L3 both. 5505 has an L2 port, and then 5506 has got L3 ports. You can test and learn concepts there. Getting started with the cables here, you got all kinds of cables, straight cable, optical cable, and what have you. Let's get into the demo quickly first. The way it works is you go into the devices here, and then you click on an L2 switch, for example, drag it right there. And then if you want to connect a PC, you connect a PC right here. And go to the cables, straight copper through, select that and click on the PC, and it'll give you the available ports. So we're going with the only Ethernet available on the PC and connect it to the L2 switch 2960, and I'll just go with the fast Ethernet for now. And there you go, it's connected. And it's going to, when you click on the switch, you can actually see the picture of the switch. You can also see the modules here, and then you can go into the CLI and you can see it came up with an iOS version of 15.02. So if you want to click and configure this guy, you can start by looking at show interface VLANs, and you can show interface status, some of the basic commands, and it'll tell you what is available and what's not. We just connected the fast Ethernet, and it shows connected on VLAN 1. Let's say if we want to create VLAN 10 and go into this interface and make it a part of VLAN 10. And then you go and run show interface status, and you'll see that you have successfully put this port in VLAN 10. And you can also see how it shows you the VLAN 10 converging. Show VLAN spanning tree VLAN 10, and it'll show you that it's still in learning mode. And once it turns green, there it is. This learning mode would change into a forwarding mode. There you go. So it listens, and then it learns, and then it forwards. That's how a spanning tree works. So we got our first switch configured with a PC connected to a port. Let's demo another PC connecting to a second port, and second port is 02. And now we will go into the switch again, As soon as you connect, it will show you which interface is coming up when you connect the cable. And that's exactly how it looks like in the real life too. Interface FAT02, let's put that into switchboard access VLAN 10, which is the VLAN that we created. And then we're done. So both of these PCs are PC0, PC1. You can even change the name of this guy. And for your remembrance purposes, you can even specify some of the stuff, like you can take a label from here and say, okay, this is going to belong to VLAN 10, and it's going to belong to the IP address 10.1.1/24. Do the same here, VLAN 10, IP address 10.1.1.2. Default gateway, let's just say 10.1.1.254. Go here to change this guy. Default gateway. So let's configure these guys. You click on the PC and then you go to the desktop. You'll see all the modules here. And on the module desktop option, you go to the IP configuration. You put your IP as you labeled it. And /24 is, and your default gateway is that's your first PC, and then you go to the second one, IP configuration, and that's about it. You should be able to now go and look at the if you just hover over the layer 2 switch, you should see all the quick links overview. You can also hover over the screen stuff, this screen port, and it'll show you the port. It kind of disappears, but it does show you which ports you're connected to. So let's look at the MAC addresses and show MAC addresses. And it has already, as soon as you configure the port cabled up, and you configure the default gateway, it will ARP for that default gateway, and the switch will learn the MAC addresses and where they belong. So PC10, PC1 or computer 1 interface address is 9106, and computer 2's network NIC interface or network interface card's MAC address is 5D8B. And you can probably even look at this guy, hover over it, and you can see that MAC addresses are displayed right here on the right corner. See, if you move, you can't move, but if you look at the MAC addresses on the right column, it'll tell you the MAC addresses of the fast Ethernet interface 9106 and the Bluetooth, which is down. Same with this guy. There you go, 5D8B on the right side, right column. So that's pretty cool for learning purposes. You see the MAC addresses, the IP addresses, and then the switch is actually learning the MAC address table. You can also now ensure that you can go to the command prompt and type a usual command like ipconfig, and you'll see the IP address that you configured, and you'll see the default gateway that you configured. And if you try to ping your other side of the network, which is this computer 2, you'll see that it's working. So now you got this basic layer 2 on a VLAN 10 configuration up and running. Now obviously this is a layer 2 switch. It would not route. What that means is is that if you click on this guy and do show IP route, it's not even available. You cannot configure IP routing here. So if you get more than one VLAN, show VLAN brief, you got more than one VLAN, and this is the default. You would not use this one for your production. But let's just say if you have 10 and 20, you would not be able to route. So let's put another PC. Let this guy sit here. Here's our VLAN 10. Let's put another PC here. That's going to be VLAN 20. Computer 3. Label this one as 10.2.2.2/24 VLAN 20. So if you want to go connect this VLAN 20, we'll select the cable, connect this guy with the next interface. Let's go, by the time the spanning tree is converged, let's go configure the computer, the IP address. And 2.2.2/24 is, let's just configure the default gateway as 10.2.2.254. Now let's go put a VLAN 20 in. Interface came up. VLAN 20 interface FAS03 switchboard access VLAN 20. Now what you would see is that you got show IP route, which is not functional, but if you go show interface status, you got 3 ports. 2 of them are in VLAN 10 and 1 is on VLAN 20. But for them to, even when you go and config T interface VLAN 10 address 10.1.254 VLAN 20 IP address 10.2.2.254. You got the default gateways on the layer 2 switch. You would not be able to talk to other VLANs. So you are on 10.2.2, you're trying to reach 10.1.1. So you won't be able to reach it because the layer 2 switch is not going to route, even though you have the 2 logical interfaces, 10.1.1.254 and 10.2.2.254 configured here. So to route this, we're going to need an L3 switch. Let's connect a 3560 to an L2 switch and make sure that we get rid of the no interface VLAN 10, no interface VLAN 20, because we're going to configure these on the layer 3. To do that, we will have to connect, let's just use the gigabit with a gigabit. And then obviously we have 20 and 10 that needs to go all the way to the layer 3 switch. For routing, we will have to make this trunk a VLAN 10 and 20 trunk. And by default, gigabit comes up as a trunk interface. All we got to do is go to the switch and show VLAN brief, and you you can see that this switch does not have 10 and 20. So let's create that, and you'll see that gigabit will come up as a trunk. Show interface trunk has no trunks yet. So as soon as we configure VLAN 10, VLAN 20, and then do show VLAN brief. There you go, show interface trunk. It's not configured as trunk yet, but because this guy we need to go on layer 2, we need to tell him, hey, you are going to show interface trunk. So we have show interface gig01 connected to the layer 3 switch. So we just have to go and say interface gig01, you are going to be switch port, not access, but mode trunk. And then if you just go show interface trunk, you'll see that gig0 has 10 and 20 by default. One, never use 1 because it's untagged. And then if you go, see it's converging again for 10 and 20. And if you go to the second switch, L3 switch, show interface trunk, and do the same on gig01, switch port mode trunk. You can see that gig01 is now trunking for 10 and 20, and it's converging. All right, let's wait till it's converged, and we can also host name, let's just say L3 switch. And then we create the interfaces, VLAN 10, IP address 10.1.1.254, interface VLAN 20, IP address 10.222.254. Now we've got show IP route. It's not enabled, but it supports it. IP routing. Show IP route. Now we can see that this layer 3 switch is supporting routing and the 2 subnets that we configured, and the default gateway we have already configured. Show IP interface brief 10 and 20 with the default gateway addresses. So now these 2 VLANs and subnets should be able to talk. Let's test it. See, it wasn't able to talk to the other side. Let's try it now. There you go. It emulates the ARP very perfectly. The ARP request goes, ARP is again, what's the layer 10 address? And he's trying to reach 10.1.1, so ARP is, what's the layer 2 address for 10.1.1? So he ARPs, and this guy sends back the ARP request for 10.1.1, but he's also ARPing for the default gateway, which is on L3. So the ARP for the default gateway comes all the way here. He responds back, and then he ARPs for 10.1.1. Then he responds to 2 ARPs, 2 request times out, and then there is, the traffic goes through from this guy all the way to layer 3, all the way back to these PCs. So that's a very cool tool, in my opinion, that you could use to learn these concepts, create and practice your layer 2, layer 3. And then in the next video, we can connect this L3 switch with another L3 switch and configure OSPF. And then also I'll demo a firewall with a server, with depth servers. That is a good practice and a learning, practice for anyone who's trying to learn the basics of networking. Hope this helps.